You're listening to the Emissary Authors Podcast, where we help faith-driven founders and entrepreneurs tell the stories that matter. This episode was made possible in part by the Emissary Author Workshops and our title of the week, The Hope of War, from Emissary author Larry Cripps. Go to publishwithemissary.com/workshops and thehopeofwar.com for more details.
Well, good morning. We are here live with the Emissary Publishing Podcast with my friend, colleague, Paul Edwards. Paul, good to see you, buddy.
Great to be here, Jason. It's been a long time since I've been doing podcasting, and I'm very grateful to have you along for the ride. I'm grateful to be venturing into a live and interactive version, as well as a podcast version you'll be able to pick up later, of where we dig into helping faith-based and faith-driven entrepreneurs and executives tell the stories that matter. And I think, there's no better way than kicking it off with who we're kicking it off with today, because I think when it comes to telling a story that matters, a lot of what's involved in that is transcending boundaries and limitations that we place on ourselves all the time. And I can think of nobody better to break down a particular avenue of how that happened for him and for his clients and for a lot of people he knows than Giuseppe Grammatico, who's going to join us today.
That's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to this. You and I have spent the past year or so digging in with faith-based authors, and like you talked about, telling the stories that matter here at Emissary Publishing. So let's get on with it. Let's welcome Giuseppe here to the podcast. Giuseppe Grammatico.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I'm excited. Just found out this is show number 1, so I'm really, the pressure is on this one. So
yeah,
there's going to be a public shaming if you don't perform, and the whole bit. We're going to
hopefully. Are we setting the bar high or low on this one? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Now looking, I'm excited. And I'm really excited, and I'm honored to be the first guest. So thanks for the invite.
Well, this is good. Now, Giuseppe, you and I don't know each other very well, but you and Paul go back a bit. Maybe you guys tell us where you began this journey.
What was it now? We got introduced by somebody, and I don't remember who it was. Do you remember who it was?
I do remember. He's introduced me to quite a few great guys. Rocky Lalvani from Profit First.
That's it. Okay.
Rocky's the connector, and I was on your show, and I was still pretty new, trying to figure out exactly how podcasting worked and things like that. So that's going back 2000, 2008, 2009, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, 2018. 2018.
Yeah, yes. 2008, I was in the Army back then.
Right. Yeah, so it's been about just say 5 years ago. So yeah, we started talking. We've been on each other's shows. You've been on the Franchise Freedom podcast, and it's been great. It's been a journey, and wow, in 5 years, so much has changed. So excited to kind of cover that today.
Well, yeah, and for just a bit of my brief memory on it, one of the things that came apparent to me early about Giuseppe when I met him, Jason, is this lovable East Coast frankness, right? Just come out and say it, no holds barred. If I don't like you, I'm going to tell you, right? Type of thing. So I glom onto that immediately. And, for all the conversations we've had, the podcast interviews, and just the, off the cuff chats and that kind of thing, Giuseppe has always been a great sounding board because he doesn't hold back. He calls it like he sees it. And, when it comes to what we're going to talk about, which is contained in the substance of his book, I would recommend anybody considering this avenue of entrepreneurship and expansion of your personal boundaries to speak to Giuseppe, because he doesn't come to it with some built-in agenda to steer you a particular way. He comes with the agenda of helping you find out whether or not this is a fit for you. And that's tremendously important. So we're going to dig in now. Giuseppe is the author of Franchise Freedom. You can find it anywhere books are sold. Amazon. He's got a website. We've linked to it in the chat. Linked to it somewhere around here. I saw it a minute ago. ggthefranchiseguide.com. And I think what we want to start with, Giuseppe, is just a little bit of the background here in terms of, a lot of people say they want to write books, or a lot of people even write them, but never really finish them or publish them or promote them. So just digging way back in the story now, what prompted you to go the route of writing a book and putting all that information and all that effort and time and money into getting one out there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I never thought I would ever write a book, full disclosure. I was a corporate exec, worked on Wall Street for many years, got into business ownership just about 20 years ago. And, there's various avenues of getting your story out there. And I met someone back in 2019 and had mentioned, hey, why don't we look into podcasting? I jokingly said I had a face for podcasting because we were just doing audio back then. Now, unfortunately, we're doing video, and you have to put up with me. But yeah, so we did the podcast, and he said, a lot of it's resonating with people, and we're covering different topics, but we really want to cover that story. And he felt the best way was to use the podcast and leverage the podcast to create a book. And I never thought of it. And I said, well, I don't even know where to start. And he said, that's not not a problem. We'll frame it out. We'll create a few shows based around it where he interviewed me, and they transcribed I think it was about 5 or 6 different episodes, and had a copywriter come in and, make the appropriate edits. And voila, we have a book. So never was a thought. That the process was much simpler to create it. But the main point of the book was really to, not just cover, all these different topics of business ownership, the accounting side and the legal. It was really to essentially empower people, regardless if you come from wealth and money, if you have your graduate degree, if you have no degree, if you didn't even finish high school. It was really a way to level the playing field and empower people to have this knowledge, so that not just the elite had it. And everyone said, okay, this is kind of what a franchise and a business is. These are the expectations. And this is not something that I read about or heard about. These are my experiences along the way, along with additional things like, creating one of the most important things I've learned is creating a team of, having an attorney, an accountant, financial advisor all in place, so that all your decisions are made with this community behind you, kind of, looking at every aspect, more of we call it a holistic approach. But I really wanted to, get everything out of my head. Did not want to create a long book. That's the other thing I was reading on, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the stat then was, I think most people, as far as Kindle goes, Amazon Kindle, don't read past the first chapter. So I wanted to make that first chapter really impactful and encourage people to read it. But it's a very short 30-minute book, and really it's to figure out, not to talk about all the different franchise companies, but to really figure out, is a business ownership for you, as opposed to let's look at every brand out there and if franchising is the right fit. So a concise guide to help anyone get started, and why not? I mean, one of the biggest, probably one of the biggest financial decisions you can ever make.
Mm. Mm. What happened though? Like going a little bit further back in the story,
Sure.
I remember you telling me this, and this is what I really wanted to get to, was you experienced a lot of frustration, fatigue, burnout, and what was, how much did that factor into the message that you were spreading from your time in corporate America?
And that was huge. I mean, really, a lot of people are in the same boat. There's so many resources out there. A lot of us are just spinning our wheels. And the frustration was, I didn't know if I wanted a business. I didn't know if I needed another job. And I was, interviewing like crazy and trying different things. And maybe it was the financial service industry was burning me out. Maybe I wanted to look into tech or something else. So I don't know. I think people just get into this, what do they call it? The rabbit hole, right? Just go down the rabbit hole and start looking. They're online for hours and hours, and they're not really, they're going down that rabbit hole because they don't know where to start, and they don't know what the options are. And I think, having someone that has no agenda, that just says, listen, these are the avenues. A business isn't for everyone. You don't have to own a business. You can keep your job. And invest in the stock market, invest in these semi-passive opportunities, even in franchising, real estate. There's so many different options that you can get into. And I don't feel like anyone really did a good job in laying that all out. And I felt people had the agenda. It's all about franchising, and it's not. When we go into the show, people are like, "Well, I don't know if I want to franchise," and I tell them, "Guess what? I don't know either. Let's figure it out together." And if you're not one to follow a system, if you can't follow our basic system or the book, you probably aren't a good fit for a franchise. So we talk about that. We talk about the financials that you need to own a business and things like that, the investment parameters. But yeah, to your point, was just frustrated because there was no starting point, and you start to go on these avenues of, let me just look at franchising one day, and let me just look at startups another. And what happens is, and I see this day in, day out, is decades later, 10, 20 years later, and people are still doing the same research, getting absolutely nowhere. So they're doing the research. They're getting advice from people that maybe have never owned the business. Why would you do that? Yet I was guilty of that as well. So, some of the advice I give is pretty basic and it's very direct. And I'll tell people, maybe, if you can't follow a system, maybe a franchise isn't a good fit, or you may be a good fit, but let's look at your financials. If you have no money to invest, this isn't a no money down deal, evening, midnight, infomercial that you see on TV. This is a true business. There's skin in the game. It's a lot of work. There's risk. And I think with the misinformation out there, I wanted to dispel those myths to say a franchise could be a good fit, but guess what? You can lose money, right? There's a risk there. You can make a ton of money. You can, it's just like any other business, except you have that support structure. So I think it's hard and it's difficult for me today to try to sift through what's factual and from experience and what is kind of a sponsored ad and they're promoting something else. So that was my frustration. And after hooking up with a franchise coach who helped me kind of break through and figure out, it's not about the businesses. Let's figure out your ideal situation. Like, he was asking me my goals and vision. And I said, dude, I want to just talk about franchises. And he's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Let's figure out if a franchise is a good fit, and or a business is a good fit. And let's figure out what the ideal business looks like, from the hours to the investment to where you're located. And I'm like, wow, this is a different approach. This is essentially reverse engineering the process, which was for me a game changer, because I apply that probably every day. I reverse engineer just about everything. So,
yeah.
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind when you're talking about, I guess, entrepreneurs looking to settle into something, and they tend to wander, right? Startups, maybe I am comfortable in my job, maybe I'm not. Franchising, and then they begin, like you talk about, getting advice from people who are in their close circles,
right?
Who have never necessarily walked the path,
right,
of a startup or a franchise, and it becomes confusing, I think, in a lot of regards. I saw recently a video about overthinking. People get stuck in that overthinking loop. Mm-hmm. You think you're thinking about making a decision, but actually you're thinking about eliminating consequences. And so you go down each of those paths of overthinking to eliminate the consequences of some hypothetical future, or to mitigate consequences. I'm curious, when you settled down and you made this transition, you really niched down into franchising. Was it also confusing for you at the outset whether this was going to be the path that you wanted to invest your future in?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was absolutely confusing, because at first I was looking at the different jobs and the different companies and industries and things like that. And at the time, Subway was the big franchise, and I saw a lot of people, what I thought were making money. I assumed they were making money because they own multiple. So it absolutely was confusing, because I kept getting pulled. I kept finding, looking at the shiny object and what's the hot thing out there? What's everyone making money on? So I just wanted a proven system and just something that I can run with, and I could just essentially have the playbook and just run with that playbook. So it was absolutely confusing. And the other interesting part to that was that, and I know a lot of people are in the same boat, including myself, was, you want to do the research on your own. You don't want, you feel like if you speak with someone, you're going to get sold something. So I know people are hesitant. So research shows in our industry, 80% of the buyer's journey is done prior to that first conversation. The issue I have with that is that some people aren't getting the whole picture. And that's where I have to take a step back, and I'm actually creating some more educational videos that I can send to people before the phone call, and just let's set the record straight as to, I tell people how I get compensated. I don't charge you for the service, and the franchise companies pay us. But with that being said, I want to be very clear that a franchise isn't for everyone, and we're going to go through the kind of the right fits. So I don't want you to feel pressured in any way. But with that being said, where I get a lot of people to contact me is that the misconception or the preconceived notion of franchising is it's all food. And when people speak with me and they find out it's not all food, it's dog waste removal, eyelash extensions, business coaching, mental health, 70 plus industries, they're shocked by that. And then they said, well, I don't have millions of dollars. And then they find out it's a fraction of the cost in some of these cases. So once you start laying out before you make your decision, these are some benefits and pros of owning a franchise. And, these are some industries, these are some investments. This is the difference compared to a startup. People are shocked, like, wow, I can pay a franchise fee and be open in 30 to 60 days. They're shocked by that. So yeah, it's frustrating because, no one really gives you the whole picture. And that's part of what I do. And when people ask me, well, what's your success rate? I go, I don't know what a success rate means. A success rate in sales is I close 50%, I close 100%. And that's not my role. My role is education. So if I can help you decide not to buy a franchise, I consider that successful, right? I mean, we help work together. So yeah, it's very confusing. And I like to meet people where they're at and educate them along the way. But I like to make sure they have all the information so they can make the best informed decision.
One of the things Paul talks about here at Emissary is when people come to us and like, hey, I want to write a book. One of the things he mentions to them is maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a message that you want to share, and a book may be the way to do that. And it also might not be. And it sounds to me like you do the same sort of thing with folks who are looking to franchise. But my thought centers around this idea of you have invested your time and energy, your life now into helping people through this confusing process to set themselves up for, whatever future they're looking for. Right. Why is that the message that is so important to you that you would invest your time and energy into it?
It's huge. It's basically all my trial and error, all the things I've learned the hard way that I can provide that packaged in, 48 pages. So I think, the message or the reason to have a book is you get your thoughts out there, but they're uninterrupted thoughts. It's not a conversation, so that the information is there for the reader, for the potential franchise owner to go through. Again, not stop me in the middle of a conversation, in the middle of a thought with another question, but just to really sit back. Usually people are reading this maybe in the evening, distraction free, not checking emails. So I think, having that clear message is crucial to have it down. It helps with credibility as well. Like, this guy's done it. This guy has, actually owned businesses. I've owned franchise and non-franchise, so I can definitely talk on both. But I think just having your thoughts structured in one document for people to review it, it's evergreen. Things don't change. A lot of what I talk about, aside from maybe the number of franchises, could change every year, but nothing really changes. There's no update that needs to be done every year. This is the same mechanism, the same systems that we use to help all the individuals does not change. The franchises change, the number of brands change, and availability and things like that. But I think that's where the book comes into play. And it never came across my mind until speaking with the gentleman that helped launch my podcast years ago. So it's a great way to just get your thoughts out there. And this is something that, for the most part, people are reading prior to giving me a call. And sometimes they'll say, well, I want more information. And I said, fine, give me a call. We'll discuss it. The book isn't meant to be this 500-page document that most people won't read. It would be way too much information. It's kind of it's kind of like, okay, these are the things to consider. But if a franchise isn't the good fit, why, stop here at this book. I have another book to recommend you. So I hope that answered your question. I know I kind of went off in a different direction there, but
no, I think it's spot on. One of the things that I've appreciated about writing books, I've got a book published here, and I've written a lot of other things in the past, is that it's a process of distillation of thought. It's the taking the essence, the core of what a person wants to say, and refining that into something that's concentrated rather than what you talk about, sort of diluted. You get sound bites, or you get into a conversation where I had a lot more to say on this, and it's really important that you heard that, but we didn't get to it because, we went on a number of different paths. And I think one of the things I'm hearing that's super valuable about not only your personality, your path, but also your book, and why you wrote this into a book, is to give people the concentrated truth. Because if you're going to invest your life in starting a business or owning a franchise, you got to know what you're in for. And it's not, and it's just, it is, people need clarity, perhaps. And so that's what I'm drawing out of that. So yeah, absolutely. Paul, what are your thoughts?
I was thinking I belong to a community. You'll appreciate this, Giuseppe. It's called Wealth Without Wall Street. They're friends of mine. And they have it's passive income investing using the infinite banking concept and all that. But they have this really cool tool that is, it's called the Investor DNA. And when you take it's like a disc profile test, and you take it and it tells you what you are. But then they have this accompanying spreadsheet that top to bottom, left to right, tells you all these different types of passive income investments you could get into. And it tells you whether or not that's going to be difficult for you, easy for you, because it's going to jive with your personality, or is it going to chafe against it? And what it feels like to me is you're doing the same thing here with Franchise Freedom. You're basically giving people a very simple A or B takeaway from it. Either you latch onto this idea and you think, okay, let me take another step, or you say, not for me, moving on, next thing, right? And I think that's a really good service up front. I'm curious to know, though, in our remaining minutes here, what's been the audience reaction? Like, have you had people come forward to you or reach out to you? And if so, what have they said? I'm interested to know that.
Yeah, so I've guested on numerous shows. I've had my show. So we get calls every single day. Either they downloaded the book, want some more information, and it's really just I'm in the very beginning stages, and I just want to learn a little bit more about franchising. So the beauty of the show and the book is that they come pre-educated. They understand the different industries and the investments, which helps in the conversation. But the biggest part, I guess, the topic that comes up is the topic of fear. And that's a big part of what we do is we talk about mindset and the differences of how you approach things, right? Because why do people move forward and why people don't? And I always, I recorded a workshop that we have on the website, and it just talks about this mindset of fear and what that looks like. And, being an employee, we all, a lot of people feel that that's being safe, right? It's, I have this job, I have this employer, and I go, okay, let's spin that around and look at what being an employee is. You have one income stream. We're blindly investing in a 401k. When I say blindly, we're investing in now fund managers that you have no control over. So no control over the career, right? Your manager dictates for the most part what you make and promotions. Managers are now managing your 401k. What protection do we have in place in this job? We get fired in a couple weeks, couple months severance, maybe some unemployment. So, a business is going to have risk as well. And a business is, yes, you can invest your $100,000 and lose it all. But what if it works? And what we were looking at, this aspect or this idea of time and financial freedom. What if it works? What if you can change the trajectory of your life and future generations? Yeah, that's what really, I get kind of goosebumps when I talk about it, because when I had this conversation with my coach years ago, I said, what if it works and you can set your future generations up for success? And build some wealth and have them, contribute to the business. If you're not ready to dive in, why not, have a job? And how do you protect your job? Why not have a side hustle? Maybe it's a franchise. Maybe you're selling on Amazon. It doesn't make any difference to me, but if I can help you, think about it this way, have that side hustle and have that side income. Now we have diversification. We have tax benefits. We lose the job. Guess what? You have that side hustle you can get into. So, the interest level is always here once I, tell people what a franchise is. And then you get the fear, and it's really addressing it to say, there's no cheat code here, right? This is an unfair advantage. I talk about that in my book, where you can get up and running with a proven model. That doesn't mean there's no risk, but why not, attempt to bet on yourself, invest in this business and maybe keep that job for the first year and transition. But what will life look like in 3 to 5 years? Yes, we could look at worst case, but best case, what does that look like? This investment that you make, if you lost it, would that be the end of the world? Is that investment worth, what it can actually turn into? And that could mean maybe a permanent semi-passive opportunity where you're only working a few hours a week. And, what I did was get out of my 5-hour commute per day. So, the what ifs, the mindset shift, when you kind of frame it that way, people are like, you know what? I never thought of it that way. I have nothing that protects me for when I lose my job. So, people start to ask questions, and I tell them, we work at your pace. So if you want to digest this the first couple weeks, if you're married, you want to bring your spouse on, which I highly recommend everyone be involved in this decision. We have a future conversation. So it's a real rewarding. I really like what I do. And if it means, giving someone the bad news of not being able to own a business, or if I feel like they're not a good fit, long run, I think they'll appreciate it. It may not appreciate me right then and there, but I really like what I do because it truly, I think I truly help. And, I've helped thousands of people, whether they purchase or not, over the years.
I think more and more, the right kind of people really appreciate that. When you're not afraid to tell them the truth and not make a sale. But at least they didn't go down a route that they had no business going down. I think for the right kind of person, that's the words of the wise dripping honey. So
for folks who are listening to this or watching us, you said one thing is some time ago when you talked about writing your book. Mm-hmm. You didn't begin with writing a book. You never thought you were going to write a book. However, you started producing content in a podcast, I think I heard you say.
Yes.
And out of that podcast, which I think enabled you to get those thoughts out to an audience, and figure out what was important, what was not important, how I'm going to say these things. You took that content and turned it into a book that said what it needed to say and didn't say too much. A couple things that come from that process, I think, for folks who are thinking of writing a book. You don't have to think about a 100-page book as though I have to expound on everything. You don't. You can say what you need to say and be done, which is super important depending on the book that you're writing, but also start someplace with the content that you think is valuable enough to speak about, which could be a podcast, which is, perhaps easier. One episode of a podcast is easier than going through a whole writing and publishing process of a book. Do you see that process at work in not only in that kind of initial book? Do you see that process at work in any future productions for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, with the book, it was nice because you outlined it all, right? These are kind of like, the main 5 topics. You got the intro and the outro, and that actually affects you with blog writing, with the setting up of my podcast episodes, with the consultations I do with everyone. There's always that beginning. And it's always like, all right, well, if you don't pass that beginning, if a franchise isn't a good fit, why, we don't have to get into all the other details. So blog, podcast, book, it's all the same thing. It's really, these are the main points. And many times, I do key takeaways in the book. If you don't have time to read, it's a 30-minute read, I think at most. And I even do that with the show and the blog and just say, these are kind of the key takeaways. You want some more information? We have a company helping us do snippets, or contact me today. So I like to give people options, but yes, I think that the thought process in the book and how it's organized just helps with all the content. With my social posts for the month, it's pretty much set up the exact same way.
Awesome.
Well, as we are up against our time here, Giuseppe. So I've mentioned it already, but I'd prefer the audience just hear from you a little bit about where they can learn more about you, research you, stalk you a little bit, maybe on your profile.
Yeah.
What's the best place for us to send people?
Yep. So we have a new site. The site is live, but we'll have a brand new site beginning of the year, and it's my initials because my name is ridiculously difficult to spell, and it's GG as on the screen, the franchise guide, GUIDE.com. A couple resources there. So you have the book we talked about, Franchise Freedom. Encourage everyone to, you can buy it on Amazon or download it for free right off the website. So check that out. It's the exact blueprint I used to help me find my first business. There's a workshop there. If you're stuck between employee, employer, and you prefer to sign the front of the check versus the back of the check, there's a workshop for everyone on there. And we have 150, I believe, plus podcast episodes covering, you got Paul on there a few times. We have Rocky Lalvani from Profit First. We talk about exit strategies and legal stuff and accounting, and we've had some franchise companies on there. So it's a great way to dive in. If you want one resource to start, I would start with the book, and then give us a call. You can book. I offer everyone a 20-minute call, even if you if you're kind of very early stages and you want to speak with me and have a 20-minute chat. I've been known for having these calls and hooking you up with a recommendation with a recruiter, or we feel together a job is better, and we've hooked up people with a LinkedIn company to help them rewrite their profiles and things like that. So we have, as part of the show, as with Paul being another example. If you want to write a book, I'd highly recommend Paul. So meeting him after the fact. So these are great conversations to be had, and there's always a referral or a connection I can make. So check out the site. You're more than welcome to all the resources are free. The service is free. And if you have a specific topic you'd like, you can just message me, and that may be a future podcast episode. So feel free to reach out with suggestions as well.
Well, there we go. Well, Giuseppe, it's been great having you on the show. Check out Giuseppe. His website is ggthefranchiseguide.com. And if you are a faith-based founder or executive who's thinking about spreading a message, it's burning you up deep on the inside, and you don't want it to die inside you, then the right place to go is publishwithemissary.com, where we help faith-based founders tell the stories that matter. Thanks so much for being part of the show this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.